All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the planning phase. Plan your way to project success. My name is Risa Fickett. I am the Senior Project Manager in our Enterprise Project Management Office here at SDCOE. If you haven't already done so, please put a note in the chat and let me know where you're from because it's fun to see. We're expecting over 200 people in this session, so it's kind of fun to see who's representing in our session. So if you want to take a minute to do that, feel free, and I'll keep an eye on that as we keep moving forward. Yeah, super fun how many folks we have from all over the state and even out of state. So pretty cool. Welcome, you guys. Looking forward to spending the next 45 minutes or so with you talking about the planning phase. So um, as Perry already mentioned, we're going to be using your lovely handy dandy conference map throughout today and tomorrow's session. So you want to kind of have that handy with you. If you haven't already printed it out, there is a link on the screen to download that. So you can download that at your leisure. So this morning we're going to be exploring that planning forest that Perry was mentioning, and we'll come back and revisit this map at the end of our session. So again, you can see I'll be watching the chat throughout the whole session, so I'll be asking you to use that, so you'll want to have that up and handy. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If I don't get to them during our session, what I'm going to ask you to do is click on that Padlet link that's at the bottom of the current screen and have that handy as well. So if I can't get to your question during the session, if you want to post in that question section on the Padlet, then I can get to that later this afternoon. So you'll want to post any questions we don't answer there, and then I'll be checking the Padlet and I'll answer your questions there. And if you need me to reach out to you, again, as Perry mentioned, you'll probably come into the Padlet as anonymous. So if you'd like a response, please feel free to provide a way for us to get back in touch with you. All right. Now that we're all ready to begin, before we talk about project planning, we want to kick this off talking a little bit of all things pizza. So for some of you who went through Project Management Academy, this may look familiar, so don't give any of the secrets away. But we're going to pretend that you're all volunteers for a project called Pizza for Kids. And as volunteers, I want to thank you so much for participating in this worthy cause to provide pizzas to schools to help kids. Somebody please mute themselves, or my tech support, can you guys please mute? Thank you. All right. Oh, okay. So these pizzas are going to help our students learn fractions and geometry and how to measure area, right? Pizza's fantastic. Okay. So in your volunteer directions, we're going to make sure that we're going to create 29. We have 29 people making one pizza each with 0 to 7 toppings. And some of the kids might have dietary restrictions. And the school is going to provide some of the items like plates and napkins and that sort of thing. And we're going to deliver those pizzas today on June 23rd. So if you don't have the chat open already, please go ahead and open your chat and tell me what information about this project might seem to be missing. So if this is all the information you're given, what other information might you need for this project? So go ahead and type in the chat. Time, okay, yep. The budget, yeah, how much can we spend? Yep, good call. What else you got? What are those dietary restrictions? Great. How many students? How many slices do each student get? Yep, those are great. Who's providing those ingredients, right? Location, yeah, some items, like what are they providing, right? What 7 toppings? Very good. How many students and what grade? Okay, good. Yeah, the standards we're trying to meet. What are we looking to meet, right? What are the requirements? Some people want to know when, how many slices do they get, right? Well, a little kickback for the pizza making. Okay. What time of day? Who's going to serve? Oh, how many ovens? That's a good one. Who's buying the supplies? How many locations? All right. What's the school going to provide? Okay. Oh, somebody wants cash for the gas money to drive them. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, our drinks going to be provided. I don't know. That's a new one. And okay. Who else is providing amps? Yeah, all great, great, great questions that we would have for this project. Fantastic. Okay. So let's pretend that we've now made the pizzas, right? So we made several pepperoni pizzas. We made a few vegan pizzas because, we thought there might be, we heard dietary restrictions, so we made some vegan ones. Okay. We made some kind of basic pizzas with not a lot of toppings on them, right? Because, trying to be kind of careful with our resources and not waste them. And then, we made a bunch of other ons, just kind of whatever we felt like, right? Some people like half and half, some people had square pizzas, round pizzas, all kinds of different pizzas, right? So lots of pizzas that we made for this project. Okay, so here's a little recap of our project plan, right? Uncle Freddie over in there, here's his project plan. So again, in the chat, I'd like you to type the word from the word bank on the left that corresponds with this project plan. So over here on the left is our word bank, right? And so as I'm reading through these, tell me in the chat what word you think belongs right here. So when we're talking about supporting our community by partnering with a school, which of these words corresponds with that description? What do you guys think? Oh, I see somebody quick out the gate. Yes, you are correct. It is our goal. Our goal is to support our community. Okay, let's move down to the next one. So the students, the principals, teachers, parents, who are those folks? So again, look at your word bank and tell me which word from the word bank matches the students, the principals, the parents. And you are right, it is our stakeholders. Very good. You guys got it. Okay. So now let's look at those 29 pizzas. What word from the word bank matches what those pizzas are? What do you guys think? Yep. Seeing them pop up in the chat? Yes, that is what is in scope. Very good. You guys are project management experts. Okay. And thinking about the toppings and the gluten-free crust and meat and dairy and all of those standards, what are those? What do you guys think? So those details that we need to deliver are what? Deliverables. Hey, okay. And now moving on, so we said that those paper plates and napkins and utensils, right? Those are already being provided. So what are those? Yes, you guys are quick on the draw. I love it. Thanks for playing with me in the chat. Those are indeed out of scope. Very good. Okay. Getting down here. So our project start and end date and that planning and all of that. What is that? Seeing a couple people keep typing in that chat. Yes, very good. That is our schedule, right? So that's when we're going to start and when we're going to do some quality control, all that fun stuff. Okay, and last but not least, the absolute easiest one, right? That $200, what's that? Yes, that is indeed our budget. You guys got it. Very good. Okay. So let's do a little bit of quality control. So again, our goal was to make 29 pizzas with 0 to 7 toppings. And looking at all those pizzas that got made, we can see that that volunteer team did create 29. So should we pass that? What do you guys think? Put in the chat, pass or fail. Did we make 29 pizzas? So you can either type pass or give me a thumbs up in the chat. You tell me. Pass, yes. All right, so we passed. We made 29 pizzas. Awesome. All right, so did we adhere to standards of excellence? Sure, right? Yeah, they're pretty good. And did we meet dietary needs restrictions? Yeah, maybe. We didn't really know at the time, right? So maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Okay. So let's just say, because this never happens in projects, right? You never get new information midway through the project. Of course it happens, right? So midway through the project, we're about to put these pizzas in the oven and we get some new information, right? The principal, our project sponsor, just called and he told us that they did a survey of the students and they got more specifics about our hungry little scholars. And it looks like we need exactly 18 meat pizzas, 8 vegetarian, and 3 vegan. Okay, so now that we have actual specifics um, on our criteria that we need to meet, let's see how we did, right? Okay, so in actuality, we created 21 meat, 6 vegetarian, and 2 vegan. So um, tell me, did we pass or fail this one? So again, use the chat or use your thumbs up or you know, how'd we do on meeting those new requirements? Yeah, not so great, right? We failed that one. Sad face. Okay, so let's see what else. Let's say the requirements also said we needed 15 circle and 14 square. So how'd we do in that one? Well, we created 18 circles and 11 squares. So did we pass or fail those requirements? What do you guys think? Yep, unfortunately, we failed those requirements as well. All right. So let's say, did we at least stay in budget? So let's say the budget had to be 685 each in order for us to stay in our budget. So to make those 29 pizzas within 200 bucks, we needed to spend 685. So what do you guys think? Did we stay in budget? Well, so between the pizza box, the crust, the sauce, the cheese, the meat, and the veggies, we ended up spending 950 almost on all of our pizzas. So oops, we failed that one as well. All right. All right. So did we stay under that $200 budget? What do you guys think? Yeah, nope, not quite. We spent 275. So we kind of failed that requirement as well, right? So did we at least deliver on time? Let's see. Yeah, we were on time, right? Did we get in budget? Nope. And did we meet our scope? Not really, right? Because we got all those late scope detail requirements. Right? Yep. All right. So what's the point of all this? Why did we do all this? So since we talked about the scope, schedule, and budget, right? The relationship of all three of these is called the triple constraints. You saw Perry show this briefly on screen. I just want to go into a little more detail because this literally applies to almost every project we do in the K-12 spectrum in IT. So this triple constraints is really that give and take between a project's scope, time, and cost. So if you make any change to one constraint, it's going to likely impact the other two. So for example, in our Pizza for Kids project, if we adjusted the scope, right, of what kind of pizzas and provide, more constraints about what toppings we need, then that might make us go over on our cost, or it may make us go over on our time to meet that demand, right? Or same time, if keeping the time or schedule is the most important thing, if we have to deliver today, then we might be ending up going over our budget, or we might have to deliver different kinds of pizzas in order to meet that time schedule. So any changes in the triple constraints aren't necessarily bad per se. We just need to be aware that they are going to impact that quality, and changes to one will impact changes to the others as well. So what this really illustrates is the need to really have good communication with whoever the project sponsor is, in this case, the principal, and make sure that we're clear about what is the most important constraint. So this would have been a great conversation with that principal. Okay, so you want 29 pizzas by today for $200. Which of those is the most important constraint, right? And what's they're going to say? All of them, but but again, it's a conversation to have with your project sponsors. All right. So again, this pizza analogy was really just to introduce us to a lot of terminology we're going to talk about today. So this Pizza for Kids activity really helped us to connect to terms like the cost, the time, the scope, the quality, the budget, the schedule, what our goal is. And then you also saw phases and milestones. I talked about a sponsor and who our stakeholders are, what those deliverables are, quality control, and then you also heard me kind of briefly mention those triple constraints. So we're going to use all of this terminology as we move forward into our planning phase. So far so good. Show me a thumbs up if you're with me, and we're ready to stop talking about pizza and start talking about project planning. All right. Awesome. Okay. So in this session, we're going to be reviewing the planning phase. So this is the first step in the planning phase, is to create a project charter. So again, I'm going to have you open up that chat, and in the chat, let me know, what do you guys think? Why would a project charter be important? So just give me some thoughts and ideas that you have. Why would we do a project charter? Lays out the plan. Yeah, absolutely. To help start planning, sets expectations. Absolutely. Define the goals and get on the same page. 100%. Provide some clarity, direction, to guide. Yes. Plan and organize. I love that term, a roadmap for the activity. Yes. So the end, begin with the end in mind, right? Foundations, objectives, timeline. Yeah, absolutely, Carlos. Without a plan, it's hard to meet the goals, right? Gather as much information as possible, sets the path. Yes. Plan and organize. Yes. Help visualize. Good point. Yeah. All excellent points, you guys. Yes. And leading to the right direction. Absolutely. Yeah. Bobby, I'm not sure if this is going to avoid the scope creep, but we'll try. All right. it helps. Yep. All right. So we're going to do a high level walkthrough of the 6 parts of our project charter. So in the very first part is the project name. Then we're going to talk about the project organization. So this is where we're going to list our team members and everybody involved in the project. And then part 3 is where we're going to list all of our details. So there's several boxes in here. We're going to put our description, our scope, our deliverables, our alignment to our goals, and our objectives and success criteria. And then we're going to talk a little bit about risks as well. And then in part 4 is where we're going to do our project schedule and milestones. This is where we're going to kind of just do a very high level schedule and milestones. We'll talk about the details of that later after this session in our execution. So stay tuned. All right. And then on part 5 on our charter, we also list our tools that we're going to use. So, where we're going to keep our files, if it's a Google Drive or a SharePoint, what software we're going to use, if it's going to be Excel or Monday.com. And any other items that we need to consider are in part 6. So, our budget, any kind of communications plans or training plans, etc. So that's just the high level. We're going to go into a little more detail in each section now. All right. So one of the benefits of writing a project charter that you guys all mentioned is you really end up defining the who, what, where, when, and why of your project. So the who is really who's involved, who's doing the work, who's this for, and who's going to be impacted by this. Then what is the scope, right? So what is it we're delivering? What are the risks? What's the cost involved in this? And where is might be, if it's an IT project, might be which database, which environment. It might be which physical locations, which rooms or buildings are being impacted by the project. When is the project schedule, right? What are the milestones? When are we doing this work? And then why? I'm a big believer in why. Like, why are we doing this work? If we can't answer why we're doing this work, if we can't tie this back to our organization's goals and objectives, you have to really question, why are we doing this project? And then the how, right? Everybody always wants to jump to the how, but it's always good to go back and answer the why first. So, how does this align to our goals? How will we know we're going to be successful? How are we going to communicate? How are we going to work together? So we'll be giving you several tips along the way as we work through this charter. Okay, so again, high level overview of the charter. Now we're going to go through some tips. And as we go, I want you to think about any additional tips you'd like to add or things you'd like clarification about. So as I'm going through this, feel free to type into the chat other things that you think could go in those areas and or questions you might have about it. So so the first thing you want to do before you begin is get the files you need. So again, thank you, Ryan, for posting the resource to the charter. So you want to save a copy of the project charter. So a lot of these resources will be available to you on our website. Andrew is going to be going through that this afternoon, and we'll also send you links to those. But so you want to have a copy of the project charter. And again, it's a Word doc, so it's meant for you to take and use as you need. So I'll talk about it, but it's got alignment to our goals. You want to change those to your goals, etc. And then we also put on our website a copy of the project roles and responsibilities to kind of help with the stakeholders. And then you really want to brainstorm and discuss with others. So project charters should not be written in isolation, right? I don't write the project charter by myself. I work with my project sponsor. I work with my project team. It's meant to be Anybody else who can help define the project is meant to be a collaborative effort to make sure we do capture all of those requirements, right? We do have all the information we need to make informed decisions about what we want to do with the project. And then kind of my real point on this is you don't sit down, write a charter, bang it out in an hour and move on. It's very much an iterative process. You want to write some things down, capture some thoughts, maybe put it away for a minute and come back the next day and look at it, because very likely you will find stuff that you missed the first go round. You want to allow it to be an iterative process. You might get down to the risk section and realize you missed something that might have been more scope that you need, right? So there might be risks that come up that you identify, okay, we need more stakeholders, or we need a better, we need to add this to our communications plan, that sort of thing. So, you might be building out the schedule and realize, oops, there's some more scope I needed to add. So really give yourself a little bit of time on the front end to do the planning, because it's the usual. The better you plan on the front end, the better you're going to execute on the back end. So just keep that in mind. All right, so a few more tips for our project charter. So part one is just the project name. Here you're going to write the official name of the project and the start and end date. And remember what Perry said, what makes a project is that has both a start date and a what? End date, right? Projects don't go on forever. I think Terry talked about this too, right? Projects have a start and an end date. So it's going to end at some point, and it isn't considered ongoing work, right? So the project is implementing the new thing, and then the ongoing work will be then supporting whatever the new thing is. So you want to make sure you establish realistic and reasonable dates. It's very important. You definitely don't want to make your dates artificial, because that won't set you up for success. So after you complete part 4 of the schedule, you might want to circle back to part 1 and make sure your date ranges still match, right? So sometimes I'll put a start date and I won't fill in the end date until we go down and do the schedule, and then I'll circle back and put the end date back up here. So also project organization. So you want to list anybody who's going to be involved in the project. Are there departments outside of yours that you have to consider? Are there school staff? Are there other vendors you're working with? So if you look at the top of each box, there's a short description of each role. And in the toolkit, or the roles and responsibilities, there's more details about those roles and responsibilities that can kind of help you better define that, right? So who is your project sponsor? Typically you guys, or one of your staff might be the project manager. You may or may not have a steering committee, so you don't necessarily have to do that. But for sure, think about your stakeholders. Who's impacted by the project, right? Who's it going to affect? And then who do we need on the project team? And then a big one that we've been learning around here is not only on your project team is the people doing the work, but who's going to help do training around the work? Who's going to help do communication around the project? So be thinking about those roles as well, because oftentimes, and we've got Barb on the call, you guys. For those of you who don't know Barb runs our training team for the PeopleSoft team here at SDCOE. And Barb is constantly saying we need to think about training early on the front end, right? In the planning, not waiting till the end. So just a little plug for Barb in the training team, and making sure you're thinking about training as you're planning your project. Barb's like, yes. Rather than at the end of the project, yes. And then is there anybody else involved? So here in SCCOE, we have an external communications department. So we partner with them a lot to get the word out about the projects that we're doing. So just kind of be thinking about all of those different players who might be involved. All right. So then now we're getting into part 3, those project details. So we're going to talk about a project description. So project description should be in simple and easy to understand terms. This is where you want to put the why. Why are we doing this? Should be a little bit of backstory, and then what you're trying to accomplish. So saw a quick question. I just want to address this. Is training part of the project? Depends on the project, but usually yes, right? Almost every project we have has a training component. So I would definitely consider it if it's involved in your project, yeah, almost every project has a training component. So yes, and others, please feel free to put in the chat if you disagree or you agree, or I can't even think of something that wouldn't have. Some things might just have a communication component, not necessarily a training component, but everything's got communication, and almost everything has training. All right. So keeping moving through the description, you want to make sure, again, it's easy to understand. You want to do the why, right? So a lot of times our description will be like, imagine a day when you can do XYZ from the comfort and safety of your own home, or you can do this amazing thing with this new technology. You want it to be kind of inspirational and aspirational so that, whoever's signing off on your project's like, yes, absolutely, I want that. Please do that project for me, right? A lot of times in IT, we do technical jargon and it's not very inspiring, you know? Next, we want to do the scope. So not only do you want to list what's in scope, but this is really critical, you want to list what is out of scope. Okay. So um, the reason I say this is because that way, when you get, 2/3 of the way through your project and your sponsor says, well, what about this? And you're like, hey, pull out your charter. Remember this? We said that's out of scope for this particular project. So don't just list what you're doing, but also list what you're not doing. You know, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's going to save your bacon later down the road. All right. And then in the deliverables box, you want to list the exact products or results that you expect upon completion of your project. So by the end of this project, you're going to get X, Y, and Z. Be very deliberate and specific about what you're delivering. So far, so good?
Risa, there was one question about, would you include background and purpose?
Yeah, so you could absolutely create some background and purpose in the description. I would just be mindful to don't make it TLDR, right? Don't make it too long, didn't read. So kind of, yes, provide some background and purpose, but try to keep it short and sweet, right? If it's 6 paragraphs long, probably not going to get read and probably not going to add value. So yes, thanks for that. Okay, now let's talk about goals alignment. So you really want to state how your project aligns with the goals for your organization. So our particular document aligns to our SDCOE board goals and our ITS division goals. We're giving this to you as a Word document. Please take it and adjust it and make it align to your specific organization, right? Thinking about the objectives and success criteria. You want to think about, how are you going to know if your project's a success? So for what you put here for your objectives and success criteria, make sure that you have some way to measure it or some way to collect evidence that it was successful. So did you improve efficiency? Did you improve a process? Did you increase satisfaction? And then for any of those things, see if you can later do a survey to measure, did you do that, right? And we'll talk about surveys later in closure. So come back this afternoon and you'll hear all about surveys. And then the last part you want to do in here is about risks. So the risk area is meant for you to start thinking about the things that could be risks to the success of your project, right? And then as you're thinking about those risks, you also want to make a list of the potential mitigation strategies that you could use. So identifying the risks doesn't end after you create the project charter. This is kind of just the beginning. You'll always want to be on the lookout for any new risks that might impact your project, particularly around the budget, the time, or making sure you're meeting the scope criteria. But again, you just want to start to think about what might be potential risks and how you might mitigate those risks. So for example, we're doing our Adobe Sign implementation right now, and we happen to be working with our business services unit at the end of the year. And for those of you who don't know, business services has a lot of financial things that they're doing at the end of the year. So that was really bad timing on our part. So we definitely accounted for that as a risk and identified some mitigation strategies. For example, pushing out our timeline a little bit with business services, or hitting their most critical forms now and then addressing some more of their forms later after their critical period, to make sure that we're accomplishing the goals of the project, but also accommodating their time constraints. So just an example. All right. Part 4, our project schedule and milestones. So you just want to think about some of the major milestones for your project. So for example, you might have a discovery or planning phase, you might have a design phase, a development phase. You don't have to have all these phases. These are just possible phases you might have. You might have a testing phase, you might have a training phase, again, if there's a training component to what you're implementing. You might have pre-go live activities. So like, how are we going to communicate about the change? You're going to have that exciting go live. Yes. And then you're going to have post-go live support, right? As well as some closure. So we'll talk about closure later this afternoon. So you're not necessarily going to know every task and activity. So you just want to gather as much information as you can. This is meant to be kind of at a high level. You'll transfer this information into your project plan during the execution phase. Just remember to make sure you include time for closeout, and that you're going to be using this information later. It doesn't have to be perfect in your charter. The charter is just meant to be kind of like a high level, rough estimate of your time frame. All right. Part 5, your tools. So you really want to think about what tools you're going to need for this project. And you want to just use whatever tools you have in your organization. You don't have to go out and find that perfect tool. Just use the things that you already have. So if you're a Microsoft shop and you've got Excel, great, use Excel. Use, OneDrive or SharePoint. If you're a Google shop, that's great. Use Google Drive, use Google Sheets, whatever you have. You just need to call it out so that all the members of your project team know where the files are located and what software they're using. Okay. When you're all done, you've crafted this gorgeous, beautiful charter, meet with your project sponsor and review the charter. Then you want to obtain that authorization to proceed, and you're going to put their name in that. I'm going to use my handy dandy laser pointer. You're going to put their name in that authorized by and then remove that draft piece because your charter's been done, checked, authorized for use, right? All right. Any thoughts or questions about the charter before I move on?
Teresa, I peeked at the Padlet just to see if there were any questions that went there. And there was one is, after you write this charter, if you identify another risk, do you go and update the charter or what would you do? What's the best practice?
Okay, great question. Yeah, the charter is really meant to be a moment in time. So once your charter is authorized, you don't really go back and edit the charter. You'll want to keep track of your risks in either a risk register or you'll be communicating those risks using status reports to your project team and your project sponsor. So as new risks arise, you'll be using that. Yes, I saw Alex put in the chat a changelog. You could potentially use a changelog as well. And then Jenny, or Janae, I'm sorry. How would you go about creating a charter for a project you already started? You can always go back and create a charter. I would say there's no time limit on that. Okay, question about an example of a project sponsor. So in my organization, so for example, Becky Benson is my sponsor. She's the person in charge of all enterprise applications. So she's in charge of PeopleSoft. And so anytime there's a PeopleSoft project, Becky is my project sponsor. So when it comes to making decisions about the project, when are we doing the project? Are we funding a project? She's the ultimate decision maker in that. So she's my sponsor. Let's see. And then should charter be written by one person or she should team? So 100% do it collectively. Do not do one person. I 100% believe that you will get a better product the more brains you have involved in making decisions. So if you do it in isolation, you will likely miss stuff. So if you bring your project team together, you're much more likely to capture all of those scope requirements, all of those potential risks. IT folks are fabulous at identifying risks. So you want to identify all those risks ahead of time, bring in IT people. They will tell you exactly everything that will go wrong with your project. All right, I'm going to keep us moving. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is a file repository. So after your project is authorized, you want to set up a file repository. So it's just really where you're going to store your files. So you want to pick where you're going to keep them and then set up a logical file structure. So for example, we number our folders so they are easy to find and they stay in the same order. If you just, this is SharePoint, it will automatically just organize by alpha. So you can do that too. But we have a folder for meetings, a folder for the plan, a folder for those status reports, a folder for requirements, a folder for training, et cetera. So you can set these however you want. This is just an example of what we use. You want to make sure that everybody involved in your project has access to these folders. So we're a huge SharePoint shop in our organization. So we use SharePoint constantly. Every project has its own folder. Every project team member has access to the folder. We even have projects where we have outside district folks participating in our projects. So I will actually have a folder that's for our district extended team members, and any files I want to share with the district staff always go in that one folder. So they only have access to the files I share with them in that, not the entire SharePoint. We also want to explain to the team where and how to access the files. And you actually kind of want to be careful with the timing so that they don't get confused, right? So I don't want to share the SharePoint before I've kind of kicked off the project because then people get confused about what they're doing there. And then obviously you want to make sure that you add new people who join the project later. And then also for my particular organization, we actually have to remove people once the project's complete when they no longer need access to those files. Um, all right. Next, we're going to talk about defining and organizing the work. So here's just a few tips for creating a project plan. Now, again, as we mentioned, we use monday.com, but you can absolutely just as easily create a project plan. An example for Excel. This is an example for Excel. This would also work in Google Sheets. So a couple things to keep in mind is you want to make sure that you're numbering your phases so they appear ordered when you sort and filter. So the planning phase, the prep phase, the execution phase, etc. You also want to use column filters so that you can view the information. So you might be able to filter by phase or filter by who owns them, etc. You also want to start your items with a verb so that clarifies what you're doing. So we're going to obtain, we're going to test, we're going to meet, we're going to create, so it's very actionable, right? You're looking at action items, not just the deliverable itself, right? So it's create training, not training materials. Make sense? All right, moving on. 4, we want to set the spreadsheet as a shared document and make sure team members know that they can update their own items. So kind of gone are the days where the PM was like the keeper of all the information and nobody can touch my project plan. We're really moving to a very shared model, a distributed model of ownership. So we're encouraging project team members to come in and update their own items. So it makes a lot less work for the project manager. I don't have to ask you if your tasks are done. You can go into the project plan and update it yourself and tell me your tasks are done, or tell me if you have questions or issues. You also want to make sure you set realistic and reasonable due dates. We know that everybody has real jobs in addition to whatever project they're also doing. So you want to make sure you give adequate time for people to get the work done, right? I know the work only takes, a particular task may only take an hour or two, but keep in mind that it may take them a week to get that 1 hour task done, that kind of thing. So keep it reasonable. And then you want to limit your statuses to just a few and be really consistent. So either you haven't started it, you're working on it, you're done, or hope you're not stuck, right? So keep it simple, use whatever terms you want, but really keep it to maybe 3 or 4 statuses. You don't need a million statuses, right? It's just going to be confusing.
Risa,
Right.
there was, maybe just so you cover it. There's a question on can discuss how monday.com integrates with SharePoint.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little. If you want to talk about it in more detail, we can talk about it tomorrow at lunch. Like if you want to join our lunch hour, we can kind of go into more detail and show you a little more. But this is a screenshot from our monday.com software. But you could use any project software. We're not specifically pitching that. But again, it just shows you, here's an example of an item in the planning phase. These are all the sub items. We have who's responsible, the status, and the due dates. It's super simple, but it's a great way to stay organized. And again, we ask project team members to come in and update their own items. We don't always, we rarely do it for them, right? We really, again, it's that personal responsibility thing. Okay. I want to talk briefly about the difference between a project charter and a project plan. So your project charter, like we talked about, that's a Word document. You're kind of creating it, getting authorized, and then setting it aside. Your project plan is really, whatever software you use, whether it's Excel or Sheets or monday.com, it's really your living, breathing document, if you will. The charter is really created before the work begins. So you create the charter, get it authorized, then start the work. Your project plan is set up after your charter is authorized, and it's what you use to manage the day-to-day work and add those new scope items or add those new risks as they come in. Your project charter has the timeline and milestones that you set up, but really you're using that to then build out your project plan and add all that depth and detail. So you might have said you needed testing, and then in the project plan you're saying, okay, I need these specific test scripts written. Your charter is really an artifact. You don't really need to go back and edit it further. And again, that project plan is that living, breathing, evolving document that you're going to use and keep adding, hopefully not too much scope, right? But if there's refinements to the requirements, if there's additional risks, this is where you're going to document these things. So that's kind of the difference. Just wanted to make sure you're aware of those. All right, and then we're going to move into the kickoff meeting. Okay, so we have a template that you can use for your kickoff meeting. It's really just a starting point. You're absolutely free to tailor it to meet your needs. And we also have a Word template for the agenda if you want that as well. But I just kind of want to walk through this at a really high level for you. So here's some sample slides from a kickoff meeting from a dashboard project that we did. So this slide came from part 3, the deliverables, and you can see the image depicts what our project team would be creating and delivering. So it's just a nice visual way to show what we're working on. And then this second slide came from parts 2 and part 4 of the charter, where we listed the different project team members here on top, and then down below is the schedule on the bottom. So again, a visual way at the project kickoff to show here's what we're trying to accomplish, here's who involved, and here's kind of a high level of the schedule. Again, you're taking and reusing that data. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're just kind of making it visual. All right, so it's important to plan and conduct a kickoff meeting so that everybody on the project understands what it is and how they're involved. So you've got this beautiful, fabulous project charter that you created, and you're going to use that to leverage and create your slides. And make sure you invite everybody on the project. So we want to share the what and the why of the project. So what are the problems we're trying to solve? What things are we creating? Right? Who's it for? What's the justification? What are the objectives and success criteria? We want to talk about who's involved, all of that. We want to explain when the schedule is, what are the different phases. We want to talk about how we're going to work together, the expectations, how everybody's going to communicate. And then we want to talk about those tools. So if we're using Monday.com, we want to show people how to use it. If we're going to use a file repository, we want to show them that as well. So real quick in the chat, I know you guys are chat fanatics at this point. I just want you to post in the chat, after this kickoff meeting where they've learned all this information, how do you want your project team members to feel? Like walking out of that kickoff meeting, how should they feel? So just a couple quick thoughts in the chat. Yes, love it. Excited, pumped. Absolutely. What else you got? Informed, focused, prepared. Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Fantastic. Yes, absolutely. Right. You want them confident, ready to go. Right. We got this. Yes. The opposite of confused. Yes. 100%. Very good. Yes. Ownership. Yes. Taken care of. Clear understanding of the purpose. Yes. Great points. Yes. Well informed. Excellent. Yes. Keep that in mind. So design your kickoff so that you achieve those outcomes. You feeling me? Right? Don't make it dry. Don't make it stuffy. Give people what they need to know. Help get them pumped up and ready to complete this project for you. Right? All right. Let's talk just real briefly about stakeholders. This is a screenshot of a very simple example of a list of stakeholders. And this lists departments, job titles, et cetera. We're going to be talking a little bit more about our stakeholders in our next session about the execution phase. But just keep in mind, your stakeholder register can have whatever information you need. If you need job titles, email addresses, if you need to know if they're a manager, what division they're in, you can include all of that information in your register. I typically have multiple tabs for multiple components. So I have a tab for my steering committee, a tab for my project team, a tab for my district team. So really build it out however you need. I just use Excel for this. All right. And last but not least, you want to make sure that we're including a communications plan as part of our planning. So again, this is a very basic screenshot, just showing a single part of a communication plan. So really, this is just a simple list of the dates and types of communications. And in this particular example, it was for the PeopleSoft upgrade. So you want to be able to make sure that you're outlining both internal communication as well as external. So in our organization, we might have internal, like our own project team, and then external, our customers, whoever's using the product that we're working on. And then for large scale projects that impact a lot of employees, we also partner with our communications department. And again, I'll talk about that in a lot more detail in the next session. So with that, congratulations. In 45 minutes or less, we have completed the planning phase. Give yourself a round of applause. Very good. Okay, so now that we have completed the planning phase, please take out your handy dandy conference map. And we have checked off the charter, the file repository, the plan, and the kickoff meeting. Oh yeah. All right, so please go ahead and take out your plan and put any little notes that you have about our session right here down in the bottom. If you haven't done so already, you can click that download link and download this chart for yourself. And with that, I thank you all very much for attending my project planning session. again, this presentation is in Sched and our resources are on our website, and we'll be talking about those more this afternoon. So yeah, as Perry put in the chat, take out your handy dandy map. Make sure you're putting a 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on how you feel with regard to your level of expertise in these areas. And we will revisit this throughout the day. So thank you guys so much. If you're going to join me, I will be teaching the execution phase starting at 11. So go take a quick break, grab some coffee, and we'll see you back in 15 minutes or so. Thank you.